All right. Hey, everyone. We are back with the second episode of the DIMO Developer Workshop. I am here once again with my buddy James. How are things going over there, James?
Things are good. I hope the developers got to play around with the publicly available data and got their developer license provisioned via the developer console. There's so much to build just with the public data, but the license opens you up to more data fun.
Oh, yeah, we got the app created last time. And does that just allow me to tap into all the vehicles?
Oh, the answer is yes and no. The app configurations, including your API keys, does allow you to obtain an access token from the DIMO auth servers. Typically, developers will have to go through a 3-step wallet authentication challenge and sign in with Ethereum. We've built a developer SDK in TypeScript to expedite the entire process. Simply download it via the npm registry, and you can get access token in a few lines of code. Here, I'm going to show you how that's done. I've written out some code, and I ran npm install at DIMO network /DIMO Node SDK. And here I'm importing it into my file right here. I'll initiate it by calling const DIMO, equals new DIMO production, and we're using the production environment here. What I'm showing here is I'm running a function that basically calls the identity API, as we showed earlier in our previous workshop, and that I'm calling to see how many Teslas are there in the network. When I run this, you'll be able to see how many Teslas are there on the network. Remember, no API keys is needed for this. The only thing that you need is the DIMO SDK. This is the public data. So
Oh,
as of
yeah, there we
today,
go. 20,094. We talked a little bit last time about querying the count of Teslas on the network.
exactly. Now, next up is actually hitting our private API endpoints, which is getting the access token. Here, I'm going to show you how that's done. All you need to do is plug in your client ID that you received on the developer console, the redirect URI that you had enabled in the developer console as well, and also your API key in the private key section. When that's all done, you can come here and actually run get access token. When I execute this, this would actually output my access token in the format of a bearer token.
Cool, cool. So like with that returned access token, then I have access to all the vehicles, right?
You're close. Remember I said yes and no. I've also mentioned that DIMO is the user privacy first connected vehicle network. Your license does allow you to register as an API user, but no vehicles have shared their permissions with you by default. You need to get vehicles shared with you with your license in order to access individual vehicle data.
Okay, okay. So what if I'm a little behind the curve and I don't have a DIMO connected vehicle available yet? Asking for all my fellow developers that aren't connected.
Great question. Well, the DIMO team is full of car enthusiasts that are willing to share their vehicle data with you. You can go to our Discord channel and ask our community members to share their vehicle data with your application. It's one thing to get data access, but even better if you can solve real use cases for end users in the world.
Nice. So after I get that permission from end users to access their vehicle, what do I do? Once again, for my developer friends asking.
Yes. So for each vehicle that you have access to, you should have their public vehicle token ID. This can be easily found by the identity API that we mentioned earlier and that we showed last time. For each vehicle that you have access to, you should have their public vehicle token ID. This can be easily found via the Identity API that we showed last time. This token ID is essentially the identifier for each vehicle, since you need it every time you attempt to access their telemetry data. Let's say I've shared my vehicles with your developer license client ID. And my vehicle token ID is 21957. Your license is now privileged. And depending on what level of data I share, you, as the developer, you'll be able to see that data on different endpoints. So here I'm checking your developer license, and I can see that you have this many vehicles connected, and each of one of them have its own corresponding token ID.
Okay, cool. So does that mean I can build a delivery application with the trips data? For example, I live in New York. Could I build a delivery grocery app?
Yes, you could definitely build your own Instacart if you wanted to, with accurate vehicle data acting as the source of truth for vehicles and locations.
Okay, tell me a bit more about this telemetry API and what could I test out with it?
Yes, of course. So I will share what the telemetry API looks like. Essentially, it's the same GraphQL user interface here. It's where all the sensor data are aggregated and presented. It's also very securely built behind our authentication gate, which we call token exchange. With the original access token that you had earlier, you should first ask for a token exchange for a specific vehicle token ID that we saw earlier. With each exchange interaction comes with a special privilege set that is validated and granted if applicable. If you, as the developer, really have the access to that certain vehicle, you'll get that privilege token back from the service. Use the privilege token as the authorization header and get squared away with dynamic vehicle data.
Okay, this exchange seems to be an interesting setup.
Yes, it is. We had to ensure that the end users, aka the consumers, are not randomly giving out data without their recognition or permission. This privilege model helps secure the permissions. We realize that this is an extra step for the developers, and that's why the SDK is here to the rescue. Simply call the exchange function under the token exchange endpoint. You get a formatted authorization header back returned from the SDK. Let me show you how that works.
Okay, I'm liking what I'm seeing. With the auth headers, then I'll just be able to start swimming in this data lake, right?
Yeah, speaking of data lakes, DIMO also supports a pub/sub network through Streamer. So developers can really build a stream of data flowing into that lake. And that's all available via the SDK today.
Nice. We love our deep in partner streamer over there, and that sounds really interesting. So it seems like you can build almost anything, a dashboard full of aggregated data, a management dashboard, proactive monitoring of vehicles for both signals and events. Basically, any service related to cars, and probably a lot more that we're not even thinking of.
Yes, and that's just the start of it. Here I'm showing you how I can actually get a trip data, the latest trip data for my vehicle. It's simply a couple lines of code, and you could actually get the start location and the end location of my most recent trip yesterday. Vehicle data has been locked down by the manufacturers for too long, where nobody really knows what vehicle signals look like anymore. So the exposure of these data is step one for us. Realizing the business insights from them is the crucial next step. Therefore, we're making all of this open source for builders around the world to figure out. Cars are essential to our daily lives, but it is also very localized to the region you're in. For example, maintenances and services in Japan are way different from what you would expect in the US. So instead of monopolizing the data ownership, decentralization is the way to go.
Absolutely. I feel like I've been hype about decentralization and Web3 for a long time, but now it's making me like rethink car ownership and data privacy and mobility. So a very interesting union between the two worlds. Also, I think I might have seen hinted on Twitter this week by one of the DIMO co-founders, but is a Python SDK available now?
Yes, yes, indeed it is. We've heard we did a poll earlier, I think, and the community told us, the community and the friends on the internet had told us that Python was going to be something that they had mostly anticipated. So we had actually launched our first Python SDK for the DIMO APIs.
Nice, just more languages, more support, easier onboarding and familiarity for devs that are comfortable with Python. And what was the first SDK again?
It was in Node.js TypeScript, so it's interchangeable. So it's two things that you could kind of use together.
Nice, yeah, covering two of the biggest frameworks out there should make kind of starting to tinker in the demo ecosystem a bit less intimidating for devs that are have grokked those two languages in the past.
Yeah, speaking of which, we actually have a .NET C Sharp SDK that's coming out in the next couple of days or weeks, I would say. And we did not forget about our Microsoft developers out there.
Nice, nice. Developers, developers. Awesome. Thanks for running me through some more API stuff and previewing the new SDK there at the end. I think with the prerequisite knowledge in our first session and stuff we covered in this session, devs should be ready to dive on in and go from a crazy idea to an actual usable production app for vehicles. So looking forward to seeing what they build.
Yeah, looking forward to it myself too.
Well, thanks for the walkthrough, James.
All right, thank you, Joe.